Now, 18 people who are linked to a special needs school in Sydney have tested positive for COVID-19, and that includes 7 students.
It's adding to the concern of parents with autistic children, with lockdowns and restrictions posing unique challenges for them. For more, let's speak now to Professor Liz Pellicano, who is a research fellow at the Macquarie School of Education. We're also joined by Catherine Peereboom, who is the founder and CEO of Spectrum Support. Thank you both for joining us. Catherine, I might start with you and just get you to give us a bit of an insight into the challenges around this case of this school being closed in Sydney. Obviously, we know that it's for good reason, but what does it present? What unique challenges does it present for those children and their families who are now having to isolate?
Look, good morning to you both, and thank you for having me on the show today. It does present really huge challenges for families. Firstly, I want to say that the school has done everything correct. They followed all of the government guidelines and they locked down the school and took care of their students and staff and those extended families first. So I think they did the right thing. What really starts to become prevalent for a lot of our autistic community is the missing of their structure, their routine, having those relationships with their schools and the people who understand them most. And I think what we've seen in lockdowns now is there is sort of like a 50-50 divide. You've got people who have really started to embrace lockdown and understand, okay, here we go again. This is what our new sort of life is going to look like day to day. And then completely on the polar opposite side of that, you've got behaviours that are just not coping. Meltdowns are increasing. You've got, mental health is declining. And it's starting to really cause families very, very big struggles. The regression, I think, is one of the words that our extended community continues to use a lot. And that regression leads to those escalated behaviours which are very difficult to manage.
Liz, this is something that you've been looking at, speaking to autistic people and their families about how they've been finding lockdown. What have you found?
Yeah, I mean, things have been hugely challenging for autistic people and their families, right across Australia. On the one hand, the world is not a very accommodating place for autistic children, young people and adults. So when lockdown began, it might have been a bit of a release from all those kind of expectations, obligations, kind of pressures. But as time has gone on, as Kath said, I've spoken to many, many autistic people who are having a really, really tough time.
Catherine, just go into your situation a little bit more. We spoke to you about this last year. You're on the Gold Coast now, so you're thankfully out of lockdown, but you were in lockdown and you know a lot of people and work with a lot of people in the long lockdown that we've got happening in Sydney. What's the situation been like for you?
Look, the boys, whilst my boys are all non-verbal, yes, they have clinically the same diagnoses. They couldn't be more different. And the way that they've responded to lockdown has presented us with new challenges. So one of my boys would be honestly happy to go into his bedroom with an iPad and stay isolated for 12 hours a day, which obviously presents a lot of problems just in that scenario. My other 2 boys really are quite social, which, doesn't fit in with the box that people really put autistics in. My children are social and they want to get out. One of my children last week managed to get out of the house, and I'm going to cry, but I'm not going to. He managed to get out of the house. Now, he was gone for over an hour, and my husband and I and our neighbours were running the streets, screaming his name, trying to find him, knowing that he will never, ever say, "Mummy, I'm here, come find me," because he's non-verbal and he just wanted out. And I think a lot of families like ours, and they're sharing these stories with us, it's homeschooling is just gone out the window because they simply can't engage their children that way, and they don't want to be engaged that way. They want to get out and they want to have those connections with their therapists and their school teachers and the bus drivers. And I think the main word that the community is really highlighting is forgotten. They feel forgotten. They feel forgotten by the Australian government, and they feel forgotten and invisible by these people who are constantly flaunting the lockdown rules. Now, 2 of my children are immune compromised. So all of these people who are hanging out down at Bondi Beach and things like that, I really wish that they would just take a moment of pause and understand that the vulnerable communities like ours really need to be at the forefront of your mind.
Liz, Catherine has given us a bit of an insight why you can't put autistic people into a box, because people experience it very differently, and so therefore are experiencing this COVID outbreak and the lockdowns very differently. What could be done differently and better?
Yeah, well, as Catherine said, I think we're not listening hard enough to autistic people or many other groups in society right now. Understandably, everyone's focus is on the daily COVID case numbers and keeping up to date on the lockdown rules. But while that is all going on, there are hundreds of thousands of people across Australia who are suffering, often without anyone in government apparently noticing. I think we've got to do more to design the restrictions and the policies in a way that doesn't do enormous harm to autistic people and their families in the short term and in the longer term, as well as other groups.
And Catherine, what are your thoughts on how this could be done better? Because we know the challenges of lockdown, we know the challenges involved in the vaccination rollout, particularly for those vulnerable people, the challenges, for example, involved in panic buying, when people panic buy. What could be done better in the future, or what could have been done better?
Look, I think we just need to remember that we're all in this together, and we need to start removing some of those ideologies that it doesn't count to me, I'm okay, I can go and do this and I can go and do that. I think we need to just become a bit more of a human society. Absolutely. I think that certain families need exemptions. They need exemptions to be able to go to work. They need exemptions to be able to go and see their therapists. They need exemptions to be able to get out of the house. Just a drive for my kids seems like a little bit of an outing, and they don't feel so cooped up. The panic buying, I thought that we were beyond this. And while supermarkets have done a fantastic job in now negating some of the issues, I still couldn't get diapers that my children live in every single day. The baby formula, the toddler formula that some of my kids are still on, we couldn't get that again. And I just really wish that everybody would just please listen to the government. They are the experts. They are sourcing experts to deliver this information to us. And if we all play our part, then we can get back to whatever the new normal is going to be for our lives.
Liz Pellicano and Catherine Puriboom from Spectrum Support, we really appreciate you joining us this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
I think Catherine, I think Catherine said it there, right? I mean, she said if we all play our parts, we can all sort of get to some sort of normal, whatever the new normal is. And it's also important to remember that we're not the only ones in this lockdown as well. There are so many other people who are in it, and whatever actions we take actually impact other people as well.
And, on the panic buying situation, for Catherine and her boys, there are particular things that they particularly need and want, which is very related to their autism. And so it's important for them. And they're not as open to change as everyone else. And so I think it's important, especially during those sorts of times of panic, to think about other people as well.
Yeah, it's true.
Important.